blazing new trails in cooperation and discovering new grounds for solidarity with an Asian neighbor, President Fidel V. Ramos arrived here today for a 6-day state visit to strengthen bilateral relations with the People's Republic of China. The pursuit of economic diplomacy, one of the favorite catchwords of the president, tops his noble and worthy objectives for the visit. A special PAL flight Airbus carrying the chief executive, First Lady Amelita Ramos, and members of the official delegation and entourage touched down at the So-2 Capital Airport in Beijing at around 3 this afternoon. A red carpet welcomed the president and his party, as befits a national leader who is the first to visit China since the recent session of the National People's Congress and the first to be received by Chinese President Jiang Zemin as the newly elected head of state. Philippine Ambassador to China Felipe Mabilangan greeted the first couple at the ramp of the aircraft. They were later introduced to the Chinese protocol officer in attendance, who welcomed the President and Mrs. Ramos on behalf of the Chinese government. 2 Chinese children also greeted the first couple with bouquets of flowers as a gesture of Chinese cordiality and a prelude to even higher points of hospitality that are expected to attend them from their arrival. The President and the First Lady were received by the Minister in Attendance Liu Jiang of the Ministry of Agriculture and Madame Yu and the rest of the Chinese welcoming party. But the official welcome ceremony awaits them tomorrow at the Great Hall of the People with the usual pomp and pageantry of the Chinese. After acknowledging the reception line this afternoon at the airport, the chief executive and Mrs. Ramos were immediately led into their respective cars awaiting on the tarmac, where they departed for the Diaoyitai guest house, which shall become home to the president and his delegation for the duration of the state visit. A powerhouse cast, which includes former New People's Army leader Bernabe Buscaino, accompanied the president, as well as 70 members of the Philippine private sector, mostly businessmen. Together, they hope to sustain the administration's top-level economic diplomacy drive and create opportunities for an exchange of views on nation-building, economic reforms, and political and security situations in East Asia. The president's itinerary for his 6th foreign travel since assuming office in June last year includes Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangdong. On his way home, he will stay overnight in Hong Kong and meet with Filipinos there. It is hoped that his visit to this land, with 1/4 of humanity and whose experience with its socialist market economy had become a great success, will be as meaningful as his recent trip to Japan and the previous ones in the ASEAN orbit. As the remaining bastion of world communism, China has embarked upon its search for a new regional and global role. The Philippines, meanwhile, is nearing the stage of economic takeoff, and economic cooperation with China will help consolidate Philippine economic gains and lend greater momentum to growth. During the state visit, President Ramos, in separate meetings with President Jiang Zemin and Premier Li Pang, will meet to forge an enduring, progressive, and forward-looking partnership between the 2 countries. The Chinese may possess one of the most ancient civilizations in the world and may have a different political system, but their leaders have stressed that ideological differences will not hinder China's normal and fruitful relations with other countries. During the visit, the president is also expected to get China's views on regional security. The reported arms buildup in China has made its neighbors edgy. Thus, an exchange of views on recent world developments and the political and security situation in the Asia and the Pacific is deemed vital. Efforts toward the peaceful resolution of the territorial disputes over the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea would also be among the top topics during the visit. The 3-leg visit will be capped by the signing of the 1993 Trade Protocol Agreement and at least 7 joint venture agreements by private Filipino businessmen with their counterpart Chinese state-controlled enterprises. The agreements should increase Chinese investments to the Philippines and further narrow the trade gap between the 2 countries, which has always been in favor of China. The president will also visit special economic zones and township village enterprises, the economic organizations that link agricultural and industrial production at the village and township level. Since Filipino government officials have acknowledged that the trip would basically be a learning experience for the Philippines, given China's unprecedented growth rate, the hosts have arranged for the Philippine delegation a special visit to economic zones. President Ramos is expecting to derive very substantial benefits from this visit. He had said that China has been very sympathetic and unusually warm in their support of the Philippines so they can contribute to helping the country out of its problems, especially in the field of power development, manufacturing, as well as agriculture. With a changing favorable perception of the Philippines as a soon-to-boom market coupled with a chief executive state visit, President Ramos is expected to be aggressive in his sales pitch for the country in order to spark a new interest in the Philippines. This is what's in order for a country whose foreign policy agenda is to reach out for wider and warmer regional cooperation. As chief implementer of the country's overall development plan, chief foreign policy maker, and the nation's #1 spokesman, who else can argue the country's position in the best possible manner? This was how the Great Hall of the People, China's important arena of activity, looked like yesterday. Hardly bare with weekend Chinese visitors from outlying provinces, eager to just roam around the historical Tiananmen Square or have their pictures taken against the former seat of imperial power, the Forbidden City. It is said that during Chinese national celebrations, the total floor area of the Great Hall and the 98-acre Tiananmen Square combined can accommodate up to 1 million people. This was the Great Hall today. But what appeared to be a national Chinese celebration, judging from the mass turnout of the officials who dropped in to witness the affair, was actually the welcome ceremony for President Fidel V. Ramos. Members of the President's official delegation, Chinese senior officials, and a large number of the Philippine and Chinese press filled the area as they awaited the arrival of the Philippine head of state. The President and First Lady Amelita Ramos arrived at the reception area, accompanied by the Minister in Attendance, Minister and Madam Liu Jiang of Agriculture, at around 9:30 this morning. The first couple was greeted by His Excellency President Jiang Zemin, marking a historical coming together of the two leaders and an affirmation of the partnership that binds the two countries. After the formal introductions of members of their respective entourage, the two walked along the red carpet for the traditional military honors. A 21-gun salute reverberated in the cold air as the People's Liberation Army Band played the national anthems of the Philippines and China. The reciprocal salute of the callers was a testimony to their friendship and cordial relations. The welcome ceremony was a prelude to the one-on-one talks between President Ramos and President Jiang and the bilateral meeting between their respective delegations, an unparalleled opportunity to undertake a dialogue with China's new leadership and cite the new initiatives and policies of the Ramos administration. It is most fortunate for the Philippines that this communist country, which has apparently succeeded in blending its rigid political ideology with market socialism, has found itself opening its doors to foreign friends like us.
The Philippine and Chinese governments today agreed to set aside their conflicting claims over Kalayaan Islands in the South China Sea. Kalayaan to the Philippines, or Nansha to the Chinese, is part of the disputed Spratly Islands, all of which are being claimed by the People's Republic of China. Press Secretary Rod Reyes said there was no mention of China's long-term plans regarding the Spratlys, but a peaceful solution is still being worked out. Reyes said another approach is being taken by the two countries.
They will now undertake a joint development and exploitation of this particular area in the South China Sea.
Another irritant between the two countries, Taiwan, was also taken up. Beijing has cautioned Manila against the possible effects of strengthened ties with Taiwan.
The Chinese government expressed the caution that Taiwan should not be allowed to use this people and economic relationship for the political purpose of Taiwan.
Ramos and Jiang witnessed the signing of 3 agreements, a protocol on tourism, an exchange of technical and economic cooperation, and a pact on importation and exportation of commodities. Agreements were anchored on a long-held socialist tenet, to each according to his needs and from each according to his abilities. Exports and imports will be based on one country's needs and the other's capability to provide.
China is projected to become an economic superpower by the turn of the century. And this early, President Ramos is making a pitch that the Chinese government triple the volume of its trade with the Philippines. For the Philippine Broadcast Pool, this is Luz Rimban with Julius Katibog in Beijing.
The Forbidden City is one of China's many mementos of its closeted past. But today, in much the same way that China has opened herself to diplomatic ties with countries from east to west, so has the Forbidden City embraced visitors from the farthest ends of the earth. Today, her visitor was President Ramos. The city has an area of 720,000 square meters. There are 4 gates leading to it from the north, south, east, and west. There are many gates and halls and palaces, with names like the Gate of Supreme Harmony, the Gate of Heavenly Purity, the Hall of Imperial Peace, the Gate of Earthly Tranquility. Over 24 emperors from 2 dynasties lived here with their wives, children, and concubines. The emperors exercised their supreme power over their subjects from within the confines of the walls, out of touch perhaps with those they ruled. The president's tour was attended by a crowd of curious Chinese, all wanting to get a glimpse of the first head of state to come to town after their new president took office. Soon after, the president left for talks with Qiao Shi, chairman of the National People's Congress. Mr. Qiao used to be in charge of the security apparatus of the Chinese government and is considered one of the most powerful men in New China today. Mr. Qiao also helped steer the NPC as it reaffirmed China's commitment to a market economy. For the Philippine Broadcast Pool, I'm Pia Ontiveros, ABS-CBN News, Beijing, China. China and the Philippines agreed to enter into a joint development and exploration venture on the oil-rich Kalayaan Island, the largest island in the disputed Spratlys in the China Sea. The understanding was forged during the 30-minute one-on-one talks between President Fidel Ramos and Chinese President Jiang Zemin at the Great Hall of the People earlier today. More significantly, the refocusing on economic and technological concerns on the resource-rich island chain erases apprehensions that China will flex its military muscle in the area. The good news boils down to a mutual decision to shelve indefinitely the claims of both countries in the area. It is not clear, however, what China's plans are on the disputed island chain over the long haul. In the immediate term, however, a Chinese mission is expected to arrive in May to join Filipino specialists in looking over the area and explore possibilities of more concrete joint ventures with the Philippines with respect to the Spratlys. In his briefing, Press Secretary Rod Reyes said another irritant to Filipino-Sino relations was brought up during the exclusive top-level talks, the issue of the Philippines' growing business relations with Taiwan. Philippine Ambassador to China Felipe Mabilangan meanwhile disclosed that President Jiang Zemin has given his assurance to President Ramos about the employment security of Filipino overseas workers in Hong Kong when it reverts to China in 1997. After the one-on-one talks, both leaders joined key members of their respective governments in bilateral talks that centered on increased trade and enhanced science and technology exchanges. The President's mission today culminated in the signing of 3 agreements, principally aimed to strengthen economic ties and hope to correct the current $1 billion trade deficit of the Philippines vis-a-vis Beijing. These are the 1993 Trade Protocol on the importation and exportation of the 2 nations' respective products, a protocol on tourism between China and the Philippines for the next 2 years, and an agreement to exchange technical and economic cooperation. With Boy De Leon, Mariel Gaceta, The People's Network, Beijing. Isang economic mission na pamumunuan ni NEDA Director General Shalito Habito ang inimbita ng gobyerno ng People's Republic of China upang pag-aralan ang kanilang modelo ng socialist market economy. Makakasama rin sa mission ang mga kalihim ng agriculture, finance, trade and industry at iba pa. Pag-aaralan rin ng mission kung paano nire-resolba ng China ang problema ng kahirapan. Pawang inamin ng Pangulong Ramos at ni Minister Li Jiaying ng State Commission on Economic Restructuring sa isang briefing
na pareho lamang ang problema ng dalawa nating bansa. Ang pagpapadala ng Philippine mission sa China ay napagkasunduan rin sa briefing. Iminungkahi rin ni Minister Lee na kailangang magtagal ang mission sa China upang higit pa nilang maintindihan ang economic system ng bansa. Kasabay nito ay tiniyak ni Minister Lee na matutupad ang socialist market economy sa loob ng kasalukuyang dekada. Gayunpaman ay sinabi rin niya na 10 problema ang kanilang kinakaharap. Halimbawa, anya ang suliranin ng ownership structure at ang sistema ng macroeconomic management, ang banking sector at pagbubuwis. Ang problema kung paano pangangasiwaan ang mga kumpanya na pagmamayari ng gobyerno. Suliranin rin ng China ang pagtatatag ng isang social security system at insurance. Problema rin nila kung paano pang higit na mapapaibayan ng bansang China ang open door policy nito sa ibang bansa at kung paano mabibigyan ng otonomiya ang mga local financial units. Pinag-aaralan rin nila ang istrukturang pang-ekonomiya ng mga local areas upang mapantay ang antas ng kabuhayan nila. Sinusuri rin nila ang pagsasabatas ng mga polisiya na susuporta sa sistemang pang-ekonomiya at kung paano mapapasabay ang pag-unlad ng edukasyon, agham at ekonomiya. Para sa Philippine Broadcast Pool, Pia Ontiveros, ABS-CBN News, Beijing, China.
President Ramos urged Chinese businessmen to invest in the Philippines, especially in the Government's Power Development Program. The chief executive told a group of Chinese businessmen now is the right time for investments to start coming in. While concerns were raised about the peace and order situation, the president assured the crime problem is being addressed as well as the energy crisis. One of those who met the president this morning was Chinese Minister for Power Industry, Shi Danzhen. The two men discussed ways on how China can help the Philippines end the power shortage crisis, as Minister Xi stressed Beijing is ready to help. China will extend a $25 million loan to the Philippines for the purchase of mini hydroelectric power plants. Minister Xi said Beijing is willing to provide the technology for the Philippines to become energy self-sufficient. Mr. Ramos briefed Minister Xi on his government's Build, Operate and Transfer program, as well as the problems about the maintenance of old power plants. Mr. Ramos also met with the leaders of China's steel industry, led by Zhu Ganwu, president of Capital Iron Steel Corporation. Mr. Ramos used the opportunity to answer questions about the investment climate in the Philippines, and he told them about his own economic program known as Philippines 2000. For the Philippine Broadcast Pool, David Jude Santana, GMA Network News, Beijing.
President Ramos assured China's businessmen that there will be adequate electric power supply in the Philippines by year's end. The president spoke this noon before the Chinese Council for the Promotion of International Trade. He stressed that the energy problem in the Philippines is temporary and being addressed firmly. The president said the government is doing everything to check its many problems. There are positive changes, and he noted that inflation rate has gone down by 8%, interest rates to 13%, and the government has now embarked on a massive development plan in infrastructure, telecommunications, transport, and energy. He also said he was honored greatly by the invitation of President Jiang Zemin, being the first head of state to come to China since Zemin assumed the presidency a month ago. The president capped his visit in Beijing by witnessing the signing of 2 trade agreements and 10 joint ventures aimed at bolstering the economic, technical, and trade cooperation between the two countries. The most important among them is the creation of 2 sets of 300-megawatt coal-fired project at Pinamucan, Batangas, amounting to $477 million. The signed contract, valued at $209 million, will only cover the first unit, which is expected to be operational in June 1966. The second contract for the second unit, valued at $145 million, will be signed early next year. This transaction is believed to be the largest commercial transaction between the Chinese suppliers and the Philippine private sector. The agreements also include a joint effort for the setting up of a pilot brick manufacturing plant and model brick buildings in Tarlac, and a wide range of consultations between the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the China Chamber of International Commerce. President Ramos and the country's top industrialists and business leaders knew it was worth looking forward to the China visit. The signing of the joint venture and trade agreements here in Beijing today shows that China wants to be a better trading partner. More important, it shows that China wants to lead the way in making our quest for the vision of the year 2000 come true. This is Dodi Lacuna with Leo Ocampo for News 9.
President Ramos left for Shanghai yesterday, buoyed by the successful conclusion of his 3-day economic sojourn in Beijing. The chief executive arrived in China's largest industrial port city for the second leg of his state visit in China, with high hopes for an equally fruitful mission. He was met at the airport by Shanghai Vice Mayor Xia Lin and other municipal officials.
Having become the industrial and financial center in mainland China, Shanghai's experience in township enterprises and industries will provide invaluable lessons and potential models for the Philippines to learn from and adopt.
Immediately following his arrival, Mr. Ramos was briefed by Shanghai Mayor Huang Ju at the Jinjiang Tower Hotel, where the presidential party will stay during the 2-day stay here. Mayor Huang told the president that Shanghai was able to attract a substantial number of foreign investments due to the economic liberalization policy adopted by the state. These economic reforms, which for 1992 alone produced a phenomenal GNP growth rate of 14.8% and impressive success rate in the Shanghai economy, are precisely the focus of interest by the Philippine mission. Mayor Huang said that key to the success of the socialist market economy being adopted by China, particularly in Shanghai, is the substantial degree of autonomy granted by the central government. He added that the preferential policy granted to Shanghai has been expanded in early 1990. This includes the remittance of a small percentage of the total income of the municipality to the national coffers, leaving the rest of the revenue for local economic projects. Apart from this, Mr. Huang noted that strong support by the national leadership and the citizens of Shanghai themselves have contributed substantially to its success. For this year alone, 750 foreign-funded enterprises poured in some $1.8 billion worth of investments. This is equivalent to the amount of money invested in Shanghai for the last 12 years. President Ramos expressed interest in studying and perhaps adopting some of these principles, particularly with regard to the development of the Subic and Clark conversion development plans. After the briefing, President Ramos and his official party attended the banquet hosted by the Shanghai municipal government. The president will be visiting township villages and industrial sites to determine the factors that could help in the attainment of the desired economic advancement for the Philippines. From Shanghai, Mariel Gacete, the People's Network, reporting for the Philippine Broadcast Pool.
Day 4 of the state visit is more of a learning experience for the president and his delegation of businessmen, including the media covering the Shanghai leg of the visit. President Ramos started his day in this sister city of Manila with a tour of the Hudong shipyard located in the fast-rising economic area of the Pudong Dadao. The president toured the shipbuilding complex with Hudong officials led by Director Mr. Zhao Jianbai. The Hudong shipyard is famous for its capability of manufacturing different types of military and commercial vessels of high and medium speed engines, including crude oil tankers. The government-owned Hudong also builds warships as well as auxiliary vessels. Its location on the eastern bank of the Huangpu River reminds us of the development plans for Subic and whether its operations can be applied back home.
Around it, in the towns of Bataan and Zambales side, you can have shipyard industry like this. Not Filseco. Filseco can go into ship repair and occupy 62 hectares. Right now it's only using 10 hectares. But I think we can expand Filseco, and provided we maintain a higher standard, much higher than this, of cleanliness and environmental safety, I think that we can do this in Subic.
After the briefing given by the officials of the Financial and Trade Development Company, President Ramos thanked the hosts for a comprehensive picture of the Pudongno area of the 21st century. He expressed optimism for the growth of the area, awed by the massiveness of its development program. He also expressed interest in sending a working team from Manila to closely observe the plans. Reporting here at the Nanpu Bridge in Shanghai, Amelita M with Sammy Gabriel for the Philippine Broadcast Pool.
Hinikayat ng Pangulong Ramos ang mga negosyante ng Shanghai na mamuhunan sila sa Pilipinas. Ito ang sinabi ng Pangulo sa isang dinner ng mga negosyanteng Pilipino at Inchik sa Shanghai kagabi. Idiniin ng Pangulo na matagal nang may business relations ang Pilipinas at ang China, lalo na ang Shanghai. Tiniyak niya sa mga negosyante na sinimulan na ng gobyerno ang isang malaking infrastructure program upang maresolba ang krisis sa enerhiya, komunikasyon at transportasyon. Kagabi rin ay nilagdaan ng pribadong sektor ang 3 kasunduan. Isa dito ay sa pagitan ng Asia World International at Luoyang City ng Henan Province para sa isang joint venture ng paggawa ng mga hand tractors. Isa pang kasunduan ay sa pagitan ng Philippines Systems at ang China Shanghai Corporation para sa pagtatayo ng Bamban Bridge sa Tarlac. At ang pangatlo ay sa pagitan ng Pinatubo Brick Manufacturing at ang China Shanghai Corporation muli para sa paggawa ng mga bricks o tisa para sa konstruksyon ng mga low-cost housing units. Samantala noong hapon ay binisita rin ng Pangulo ang Shanghai Institute of Optics and Fine Mechanics. Ang institute ay ang pangatlo sa pinakamalaking facility sa mundo. Kilala ang China para sa kanyang Research and Development Institutes na nagsusuporta sa pag-unlad ng ekonomiya ng bansa. Binisita rin ng Pangulo ang Malu Township Village Enterprise, isa pang showcase para sa mabilis na pagtaas ng growth rate sa China. Ayon sa mga opisyal ng Malu, kumikita ang township ng 100 milyong yuan o $11 milyong bawat taon. Dumaan rin ang Pangulo sa Shanghai Foreign Trade Malu Foodstuffs Company. Ang Township Village Enterprise ay dating mga people's communes ng old communist China. Para sa Philippine Broadcast Pool, Pia Ontiveros, ABS-CBN News.
President Ramos concluded his Shanghai sojourn with at least 4 trade pacts signed between Philippine traders and their Chinese counterparts. So far, the President is satisfied and happy with the success of his mission. President Ramos makes his last stop in Guangzhou before he proceeds to Hong Kong tomorrow. Guangzhou is in Guangdong province, also known as Canton, which is one of the more economically and politically progressive municipalities in the southeast of the mainland. The President and his official entourage arrived at the Guangzhou airport at around 10:35 this morning and immediately drove off via motorcade to the White Swan Hotel. The President was briefed by the Deputy Secretary General of the Guangdong Provincial Government, Zhang Yoming, about the economic development plans and programs of the province. For the past 14 years, Guangdong implemented radical economic reforms and a policy of flexibility that saw the influx of foreign investments, joint business ventures, and increasing economic growth every year, which, as of 1992, even surpassed the growth target eyed to be attained by the year 2000. Guangdong has embarked on a 20-year development program that hopes to see the province transform into a mecca for international trade and investments. This goal, he said, is premised on laying down the groundwork for a conducive economic climate through further economic liberalization, intensified infrastructure projects, and the encouraging of cooperation with other countries. President Ramos noted that the success of Guangdong's economic boom lies on the unity in objectives by the leaders and the citizenry. More than the concept of autonomy and continuing reforms being adopted in Guangdong and all of China, the President said that for it to succeed in the Philippine setting, everyone must agree on what direction the country must take and the priorities it must realize for it to move forward.
Piliin natin kung ano gusto natin. Ano ang direksyon natin? Gusto natin yung complete process or mag-desisyon na tayo na dahil sa yan ang kagustuhan ng national leadership. Magkaisa tayo kung ano ang ating objective in the next 7 years up to year 2000.
Mr. Jiang offered Filipino businessmen to invest in Guangdong and embark on joint ventures that would mutually benefit both Guangdong and the Philippines. The chief executive meanwhile urged Filipino-Chinese traders, especially those based in Binondo, to help in the overall efforts to turn the economy around by appealing to their sense of history and patriotism. To further enhance prospects for fruitful ventures in Guangdong, Mr. Ramos disclosed that he will be appointing consuls general in Guangdong as well as in Shanghai and other areas in the People's Republic of China. For the Philippine Broadcast Pool, this is Mariel Gaceta, the People's Network.
The fastest growing economy that is China's can be attributed mainly to the Guangdong province, which the Far Eastern Economic Review described as the fifth new dragon of Asia. On the last leg of his China visit today, President Ramos met with Guangdong businessmen at a luncheon here in Guangzhou. The President called it a historic meeting, apparently his way of paying tribute to Guangdong, whose economic growth at 13% was twice the national average of China, putting it at the forefront of China's economic revolution. If Beijing is sympathetic to the Philippine economy, Guangdong province is supportive. President Ramos was enthusiastic about possible business investments from Guangdong. He announced that Guangdong will send a survey mission to the Philippines to look into business opportunities there. Shortly after the luncheon, the Philippine business delegation and Guangdong businessmen sat down and explored possible trade and joint ventures in banking, softwares, and agri-products. President Ramos then proceeded to visit two of Guangdong's largest industrial plants. The Guangdong Kelon Electric and Holding Company Limited has automatic production lines and possesses 600,000 refrigerators and 400,000 air conditioners a year, while the LP Gas Appliance Development Limited is China's largest designated manufacturer of LP gas water heaters and other kinds of gas utensils and equipped with the best production machinery. This is Dodi Lacuna with Leo Ocampo reporting for the Philippine Broadcast Pool here in Guangzhou.
Tinuturing tagumpay ang 6 na araw na state visit ni Pangulong Ramos sa China. Umalis si Ginoong Ramos at First Lady Amelita Ramos kasamang 22 kataong official delegation sa Guangzhou kanina umaga, papunta ng Hong Kong. Kagabi ay pinangaralan si Ginoong Ramos ng Guangzhou Provincial Government sa isang banquet sa White Swan Hotel. Walang inihandang formal na talumpati si Ginoong Ramos, ngunit muli niyang hinikayat ang mga Guangzhou businessmen na pumunta sa Pilipinas. At sinabi rin ni Ginoong Ramos na gusto ng Pilipinas ang pag-aralan ang economic policies ng Guangzhou. Nauna rito, binuo ni Ginoong Ramos ang 7 kataong task force na tutulong sa mga Guangzhou businessmen na pupunta sa Pilipinas. At naniniwala si Ginoong Ramos na magagaya ng Pilipinas ang economic success ng Guangdong province. Nag-uulat para sa Philippine Broadcast Pool, David Jude Santa Ana ng GMA Balita, Hong Kong.